Hello everyone and welcome back to Murph's Models. Today, from the Walt Disney Film Archives book that I have here, I have found my favourite character from The Sword in the Stone. Yes, it's the magnificent, marvellous Mad Madam Mim! I mean, this woman is mad as a cut snake and she transforms into so many different characters I can't even begin to sculpt them all. But I'll try. No, I won't. Instead, I'm just going to make her. And I found this great painting of her, and I think I'm going to use this as the basis for making a wunderbar Book Nook to create a bubbling, boiling cauldron. So here we go. Let's make the magnificent, marvellous Mad Madam Mim. I'm also going to use this reference of her as well. So I need a structure for the skirt. And over the Christmas period, I've enjoyed quite a few plum puddings. Cookie! No, not cookies, Cookie Monster. Pudding! And out of all these bowls, what I found is this one almost mimics the size of her skirt. And I found a cardboard tube that will sit on top here. There we go. Cut that and then fold this down. Tape it up and then go around the rest of the body so you make a nice shape for the top of her torso. Next up, find some nice thick wire and cut it off at the right spot, and this becomes her arms. So I'm going to pierce 2 holes in the bottom of the pudding bowl. Then I am going to stick the wire up through there and then put it through 2 holes in the cardboard tube that I created, and then bend the arms into the right shape. And where the palm of the hand goes, I'm going to do a circle, but I'm going to push that circle out and around like that. And this one's going to be holding a bone, so I just need to do a nice loop for the bone to go through. Like that. I also need to put a hole right through the middle for the head. And now that I've put the wire in, I'm doing a little cardboard plug just so that that wire stays nice and steady for the head to go on top. I am going to use my glue gun to glue this into position. So now it's time to get out the aluminium foil and start bulking out the dress and everything else. And finally, it's time to scrunch up a nice big ball of foil for her head. And there we go, we're ready to sculpt. Whee! Now it's time to start sculpting pieces. I'm going to do her in separate parts. So I'm going to do the head separately and arms separately. And I'm going to do both of them in Super Sculpey beige, or skin tone as I prefer to call it. But to start off with, I'm going to do her arms. So let's get out some of this Super Sculpey. Look, it's almost exactly the same colour as my own flesh. So I'm going to get some of this out. First thing to do, warm it up in my hand. So I'm going to do this for quite some time. I'll come back to you in a second. Ah, that's better. Now that it's nice and soft and malleable, I'll create a snake and lay it up against the design and cut in a little V and make that elbow section. I like this little curve in here, this little hook for the elbow, so I'm going to try and do that in the actual sculpt. And then I'm going to cut this down the middle of the back so that in theory we can lay it into the wire. There we go. Let's see how that goes. Take the head off. Okay, let's try and push this on. Now that it's on the wire, I can do a bit more finessing of the actual shape. And after a while, it starts to look a little bit like the design. And once we've done that side, of course, it's the same process doing the other side. Place it on the wire as we sculpt away on the second elbow. And once that's done, it's time to bake the arms. So I've already done the hand that's holding onto the bone, but now it's time to make the other hand that's holding the claw. So I'll make the palm and do a crease in the middle there. Yeah, because that's the center bit there. And blend it down into the arm. Next up, I'm fashioning a thumb, and with a sculpting tool, making a little fingernail for the thumb, and then pushing it onto the palm, and now chopping off a little finger, the pinky in fact, on the far end, squish it into shape like that, and then smooth it down onto the palm again. Nice. And the next finger in, again push it into shape, and then squish it nice and flat at the base. and the third finger, again the same as the other two, and then using my sculpting tool, I'm making the fingernails. So all I need to do now is the finger pointing up. So I'm rolling it out, and then there we go. That looks about the right size. So I just need to round off the top of that finger and turn that in like that a bit. That's pretty good. I'm using my sculpting tool again to create a fingernail like that. And already, I think we've already got something looking a little bit like a finger. And there we go. We've pretty much got a finger pointing up in the air. So the first thing to do is to get some thin layers of Sculpey to create a skin around the head. So if you look at this reference from the side, she's got a nice big chin and lots of throat, which I'm going to put in now so that we get this nice V shape. So smooth that chin into the rest of the face and then start smoothing the whole head down. So I'm going to trace out her head because I need to work out some proportions of her eyes sitting to her cheeks, sitting to her nose, and sitting to her mouth. So there's her head. Put a line down the middle, then a mark at the top and a mark at the bottom, so we can see that the top of her nose is the middle of the head. Okay, that might help me to work out the dimensions. That would be where the nose sits, approximately. I've cut out 2 eyes here, and those correspond to here. So I thought I'd cut them out so that we know where the eyes are sitting. And now it's time to do the cheeks. So I'm rolling out a few cones, not snakes, but cones to create the cheeks just under the eyes there. Push them in and then smooth them down. Now it's time to fashion a lovely nose for Mad Madam Mim. That's a good start. Push it onto the front there. And now I've got a piece of dowel here, which I'm just rounding the top of the upper lip for Mad Madam Mim. So that's going to slip in under the nose. There we go. Push it on, and using one of your sculpting tools, hopefully your favorite sculpting tool, start pressing that upper lip in there. And now I'm just going to cut off a nice clean edge for that upper lip and push the cheek up a little bit and then push the upper lip into that little dimple. Very nice. Now smooth off the cheek and onward and upward we go. I'm cutting out the eye shapes so that I can cut a hole in the head and then fill it with some white Sculpey for the actual eyes. And then, miracle of miracles, there suddenly appears a lower jaw. Yes, I forgot to film it. Usual excuse. I was sleepy, I was tired, it was late. But anyway, if that piece of Fimo is nice and warm, it's pretty easy to blend it into that jawline. Don't forget those nostrils too, under the nose. Looking at the profile of that chin is a bit too low down. So yes, it comes time to surgically remove some of that fleshiness and then smooth it down. I also need to make that nose smaller. A bit too big, it needs to be a bit flatter on the top, I think. All I need to do is get out a scalpel blade and start chopping away. I need to round that off a bit now. A bit more of a snubby nose there. Boom. Okay, there we go. That's it. Looking good. I am going to be radical here. There is no lip here. I've put a lip on thinking it was really nice, but really, she hasn't got a lip like that. She's far more cartoony. I'm going to do a radical thing. I'm going to cut those lips off and see what happens. It'll open her mouth up a bit, which is good because she's got that single tooth I'd quite like to incorporate. Wow. Ooh. Yeah, she does look a bit more like that. So now I'm going to fill in the eye sockets with some white Sculpey. I don't know why I've done it this way really. It's just a bit of an experiment, just to see if it works. Flatten it into its socket there. And then maybe using this pin here, we could push in a bit of a pupil. And then she's ready to bake. While the head is baking, I am going to cover this frame and make it look like fabric. To do that, I'm going to use a whole new pack of Daz clay. First, put a little bit of glue on here and get slices of Daz and quite literally spatula it on. So it's like quite a thin layer. And I'm just doing the front half. I'm not going to do the back because we'll never see the back when she's in her Book Nook. The Bookie Nook, which will be coming along later. And once it's completely covered, it's time to get some water and smooth it all down. So this all now needs to dry, and then we'll do the top section. So it's the same process with the top section. Glue on first, and then lots of Daz. Spread it around all over her. Lovely chubby. Then some water to smooth her down. As you can see, the skirt below is a bit rough and ready, so I'm thinking about whether I should use a bit of fabric instead. Some calico might be a good idea to make that skirt look real. So what I've done is I've cut out a lovely long sheet of calico, and I'm going to pleat it around the body and pin it to itself. I'm going to sew my thread through all the various folds so that I can then sew it under my sewing machine. Pull the black thread out, and then it's time to glue down the top seam using PVA glue. And this sort of hides all the stitching, so it makes it a nice clean finish on the top. So now it's time to do the sleeves on the arms. I have already done a piece of calico with some folds to represent this section here, and this will fold around like that. And I need to create a nice V along there, so I'm going to sew that along there and then turn it out. Okay, so I've sewn that piece together. Now folding these things back, and that is going to sit there. What I'm also planning to do is use a little bit of the soft aluminium wire. I'm going to put that inside this seam here so that that will sit around and help the sleeve to lie nice and tight. I'm just going to do this bit here to make sure it's nice and strong, that line. And I'm going to use some more Daz for that. So just push it under the armpit, and then with a sculpting tool, smooth it out and let it dry. I just need to cover the corset here now, and because I'm using so much fabric, I don't think the eye will notice the difference if I use some tissue roll. So I have some wallpaper paste and I have my tissue paper. That's about all I need. And now I'm going to lay this tissue paper on the edge here. Paint it in with a nice broad brush. And you can even use your finger to make it nice and smooth. Now, I'm going to put this away to dry. And now it's time to glue in the two sleeves. So basically, glue everywhere. I am going to put that onto here and wrap this wire around nice and tight so that it hugs the shape of that arm. There we go. Now it's time to glue this one on. Again, lots of glue is required. That's not bad, I think that's good. Using my favorite PVA glue around the top of the waist there, I'm just pulling the skirt around and pinning it up to the edges. I'm going to push these bits in. And now I need to let that dry. Now it's time to trim that fabric and make it nice and even at the base, and then fold it under so that it can be glued up and look like a nice trim skirt. And also what I'm doing, using some wallpaper adhesive, I am going to put some of this over the whole of the top of the skirt so that it seals the fabric before I paint it. Now I'm going to make a wig for Mad Madam Mim. And as you can see, her hair is quite wild, whether you use that design or that design. So this fake fur that I found is perfect with the hair direction going forward like that. And then once I trim it, it'll give us a nice crazy look. All I need to do is paint it purple. But what I also need to do is to get a pattern of the top of her head so the fur lies nice and flat on the top of her skull. To do that, I am going to use 2 lengths of this wide masking tape. And I'm going to show you how you can quickly do a pattern. I'm just going to put 2 bits of masking tape together like that, and then I'm going to lay the masking tape on the back of the head. First of all, put a bit of a fold, a bit of a crease in there, so that will be the first pattern fold. And then the same on the other side. And then I'm going to put this sticky tape together in the center of her head. And now you can see that I have created a fold down the center back. Now I'm going to cut that around like that, and I'm going to cut these 2 side folds as well, like that. Now gently start to peel that masking tape off, lay it on the paper, cut it out, and then lay it down with the fur going in the direction of arrows that I've put on the pattern. Pin this down. Then draw around the edges of the pattern. Take the pattern off and gently just cut the backing off. Don't go all the way through, because if you go all the way through, you'll lose all this lovely length of the fur. Okay, so once you've cut those sections out, you need to get a needle and thread and start stitching. I would stitch from the top down, across like that. Pull it together as one. And then once you've started like that, go under and then over, under, over, all the way down. And then once you've done that, it's time to do the two sides. And then the wig's ready to paint. Now it's time to paint. Her jacket here is a nice rich blue. And her skirt is quite a leery pinkish colour. Almost flamingo pink, I'd say. And a lovely crimson colour for the sleeves of Mad Madam Mim. Get that nice and close to the edge. Now it's time for some purple paint into Madam Mim's hair. It's just going to take an awful long time to paint it all in. Still going. Meanwhile, for her eyes, I'm mixing a little bit of green with an awful lot of yellow to get that lovely bright effect, and just gently painting it in around the pupil like that. Then I'm going to paint some crimson into the mouth interior and then let it all dry. Next, I got out my favourite green Sharpie and just defined the edge of that green line for the eyes. For the pupils of her eyes, I've just cut out some black felt with my leather punch. And there we go, glue it in and Bob's your uncle. And I've made some nice sinister eyelashes. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 by cutting out some cardboard. Around like that. And then giving them a good paint and letting them dry. Now it's time to attach Madam Mad Ming Juby's wig. And I need to fold those edges over on themselves and glue them down. So I'm going to do that with PVA and some handy pegs. Now it's time to attach this wig. And to do that, I'm going to use double-sided tape. Why? Because it's easy to take off if I get it wrong. So here we go. Now all I have to do is glue on these eyelashes and then she'll be done. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time on Murph's Models. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Stay tuned because soon I'll be making the Book Nook for Mad Madam Mim, including a bubbling, brothy cauldron. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Murph's Models.